see the path to the championship. I can see it.
The Coca-Cola 600 belongs to Ryan Blaney.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months.
Blaney! Harmon! They spin behind him! It's going to be Blaney!
We're going to win this thing.
Ryan Blaney is going to win his way into the championship for...
You have to run a perfect race to get it.
Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion!
What an unbelievable year. What an unbelievable playoffs for us.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 144 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media back in 2014. Each weekly episode of the show offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and special guest interviews all throughout the year. This week, we break down Team 12's run in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Steve, welcome back for another episode of the Team Blaney Podcast. Coming off of one of NASCAR's biggest weeks of the season, their home race in Charlotte, Coca-Cola 600, crown jewel, tons of drivers, foundations and charities are having events all throughout the week, including Ryan and their pickleball event. It seemed like it went off and had a really big time there. Lots of fun and things and raised some money. And hometown crowd. I went to the race, first 600. That was exciting. Biggest day in motorsports. Everyone's amped up. And what happens, that always seems to happen, especially to NASCAR, stupid Mother Nature decides to rain on everybody's parade and just completely throws off the entire day. And for Blaney fans, it didn't really necessarily get much better. But I'm kind of at a loss, especially with what's happened the last several weeks here. But man, it's just like, why can't we just, every time NASCAR has like their biggest events of the year, it just seems like, especially the last couple of years, like rain is always, something happens and just kind of throws everybody for a loop.
It is strange. Like the last couple of years, especially, it seems like there's just more and more rain on a Sunday. It seems like, and at the right times too. Monaco, start the morning with Monaco. And if it rains on Monaco, no big deal. They just keep driving. And I was set up to just watch things on 2 TVs because if the Indy 500 starts on time, I really don't need any extra TVs. But they get the rain delay. And when they get the rain delay, I was like, I scrambled. And I don't know. I think I posted some on Twitter. I put up a third television set off to the left of the other 2 television sets. So I had Indy on one TV. I had the 600 ready to go. And then I had the in-car camera on the bottom TV. So I had it all multimedia, poor man's multimedia. And I'm not one of those guys that's got 10 TVs on the wall, but I was ready for a lot of action. And Indy, good thing Indy didn't rain out. That race was incredible. What Joseph did on the last lap on going into 3, making that pass on the momentum and the pass on the outside. You couldn't help but be pumped up for that, especially being one of Roger's cars. And then you get to the 600 and that as the race goes on, that no matter where Ryan starts, he's going to move through the field. And we definitely had that, but the threat of the weather's and it's funny is the threat of the weather was there to be after the halfway point too, which 9 times out of 10, if that happens, it's going to call the race. They're not going to stay up way too late, and even though it's a 3-day weekend, they can probably get away with it. But it put a damper on things.
One of those frustrating times where it's like we could see it, all the forecast models, like the 2 weather folks that put out weather forecasts for races between IndyCar and NASCAR were saying like between 7 and 9 p.m. they will be hit with the storm. Like there's no like ifs, ands, or buts about it. So it's like, man, it's like if we could only just move this up a couple hours, we'd get the whole race in. There wouldn't be any problems. Feel bad for Kyle Larson. He runs really well in the 500. He makes a mistake speeding on pit road, and he ends up finishing 18th. He did lead some laps there under a strategy call. But he came out with a statement today, basically saying like what he thought was going to be the best day of his life, just kind of ended in disappointment because of the mistake he made, but also the weather just ruining his opportunity to do the full double. At Charlotte, tons of Larson fans were in the stands with the merchandise, the shirts and stuff that had the Indy car and his Cup car on it. And it's like all these people have these shirts and die casts, and I guess you don't think about that rain or something like that. Rain in two different parts. I mean, it was the same storm system, I think, basically top to bottom, that it impacted both areas. So that's very unfortunate. I know it's a 2-year deal. He can go back and do that again. Ryan over the weekend, is being asked about that again because of his connections to Team Penske. And I know you're very pumped up for this, that Ryan is like petitioning. He keeps trying to get Roger to let him participate in an Indianapolis 500 attempt. I have seen lots of people that you've even kind of engaged with them a little bit, where people have kind of pointed out some problems with that, including the fact that he's a Ford driver on the Cup side, when some of these other drivers have gone and done it. They've been Chevy drivers, and they're Chevy in the IndyCar series, so it's an easy swap back and forth. Or sometimes even if they've gone and driven for, like when Honda was involved and like things like that, like that was okay. But there's like a little bit like kind of some discrepancies that maybe could hold Ryan back from that. But I've said before, I'm a little concerned about, it's like I want Ryan to be protected and just focus on NASCAR. Would I watch? Would I cheer? Would it be amazing if he did it? I'd be just scared, because those cars are just so fast and so dangerous, and we've just seen the horrific crashes, and that just, the risk kind of outweighs the reward for me. But if we did see Blaney in the 500 and went out and won it, I'd be the first person buying all the shirts and die casts. And
well, it was Claire. I think it was Claire that either asked the question or she recorded it. And the answer I found was interesting, because he said a petition, and for him and Scotty McLaughlin is what he said. So what he was saying was not just me doing the double that way, but an IndyCar guy doing the double the other way. And I found that to be the interesting part of it. So it must be something that somebody somewhere has talked about in a manner that's beyond just a joke, and to have two Penske guys, the biggest problem I don't think is Ryan driving a Chevy in the IndyCar series, because Ford doesn't offer an IndyCar. Okay. So Ford in that deal can kind of take a back seat. Okay. And I'm sure Roger can talk to whoever he needs to talk to, but the other way around, I could see the issue, because they are Chevy in the IndyCar series, and there are Chevys in NASCAR. So for Scotty McLaughlin to come over and do a car at 600, there could be a big issue. The thing about it is everybody's like, well, the amount of time and the planning and so far ahead. And I understand that too, because, Larson's deal took more than a year. I mean, I think it was before last year's Indy. He was at Indy actually scouting the ideas and the thought and everything. But if you're going to take one team, one program between NASCAR and IndyCar who could pull it off, there's only one. I mean, it's Penske. Penske is in both series. Penske has all the stuff under one roof. They build all the Indy cars, and so they could do it. Roger would need to do what he needed to do to talk to whoever within the organizations, but also if they wanted to put the programs together, they've got sponsorships, I'm sure, right in place. Anybody could, Menards would walk up in a heartbeat and say, hey, Brian, I think we'll put it right on the car for you, because they have sponsored the IndyCar stuff for Roger. I don't know how much, we talking millions of dollars, I'm sure. But all these things could be worked out, and that's the fun part of it. That was the fun part, to put together the tweet I put together. And I thank Team Blaney for retweeting it. It's gotten a couple hundred likes and retweets.
Retweeted
it in protest. But hey, you know what? The thing is Ryan is actually interested in doing it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't say that, or he wouldn't bring that up if he wasn't interested or thought about it. And really truthfully, of all the guys in Cup, everybody looks at Larson because Larson races 600,000 races a year, with his sprint car, and even he jumps in modifieds and other things. But, if somebody else has the skill set to do the things that need done, I think Ryan is part of that. But being in-house with three guys who do it every week, week in and week out, he also knows what it takes too. And that I find interesting, without Chip Ganassi in the sport anymore, or anybody else like that, where they have the IndyCar and the Cup being made at the same place or being done by the same ownership. Ryan is the one guy, Ryan, Joey too, really, because Joey's in-house too. Those guys there, and Austin actually, obviously too, because his dad. Those guys all know and understand what it takes to drive an IndyCar, and I'm sure they have simulators over there that they probably have snuck themselves into and gotten to try before. So, fun to dream. Definitely fun to make. I'll keep pushing the campaign. If he mentions it again and again, I'm going to keep pushing, and I'm going to be the guy on the grassroots. I'm going to be the guy on the hill, and everybody come along with me, and we'll see what we can do for him.
Yeah, McLaughlin's definitely been the guy that a lot of other drivers have been pointing to as somebody I think that could do a successful, even if it's not just the 600 or something, if you just come over and run some races, is because of his ties to the Australian Supercar Series, where they were at before he came over here to run for Penske on the IndyCar side. So SVG comes in. Now all of a sudden you were getting like a several of these guys from that series coming over and running Cup races now. But yeah, McLaughlin's name comes up a lot when it comes to guys they think that could make the transition and could be successful on the NASCAR side. So like you said, it's fun to dream. It's been brought up before. I think even last year it was brought up when the Larson stuff started to happen. People were asking Ryan about it. I think at the time he basically said Roger said no, but he's been asking him. So we'll see where it goes. I'm gonna assume it'll die down until it picks back up again next April when Larson's preparing again, and then maybe we'll see. Maybe Ryan can make some headway over the off season. I would be interested to know what Lisa and Dave feel about the subject to Gianna. Like, I mean, anybody in around it. And I, like I said, for me, I'm afraid, but I'm also the person that says, love racing, loved it my whole life, worked around it my whole life, and I don't want to be anywhere behind the wheel of an actual car outside of iRacing because I'm too scared.
Saturday night at your local short track, just as many things can happen. That's the thing. I mean, you see it happen in an Indy car or Formula One car because they're so fast. You've seen things happen and so forth in those disciplines because they're public and they're filmed a lot more. But every weekend, somebody somewhere something happens, and it's part of the risk of being a driver and racing. So motorsports is not for the weak, faint of heart, and. Like I said, you got to have something inside of you that the guts. I don't know how else to put it without being, the guts to do it. And if he's got that, more power to him. If he wants to give it a shot, like I said, I'm here to help. I mean, that meme I made, it was pretty cool. I thought it's one of my better Photoshop efforts.
So I've been stalling a little bit here, but we might as well do it. Let's go ahead and do our race recap from the Coca-Cola 600, and all of that starts off in practice and qualifying.
All right, this is the rip off the Band-Aid edition of the wrap up for the weekend of 600 Coca-Cola 600. The practice on Saturday there, a couple laps in up to P9 on the board, but he says really loose here. And the 24 spun off of 4, and the 24 was fastest in that group early on. So he spun without it hitting anything, and he didn't. Luckily, he didn't damage the car. But after 6 laps, they bring it in to work on it. Now, this is normal, procedure for them. If it's good, they keep running it out. If it's not good, they bring it in and work on it. 8 minutes in, they're 10th overall in the single lap with 8 laps run. P8 and overall average lap, which is kind of a weird little thing because you can, lap average, you come in and make an adjustment and have the car be a little bit better, even with the tires being used up. They have the in-car camera for the weekend, I saw there. So they were going to be on network TV all weekend with multiple angles, which was nice. And after coming back out, everything, they end up putting a 15 lap average that ends up being the best 15 lap average, which was awesome. So you figure they must have improved something. After those, because that's after adjustments, and Fast five in that group are the 24, the 45, the 23, the 77, and the 1. And that's interesting. The 77 is one of the Fast five. And Group B, the Fast five is the 54, 5, the 17, the 19, and the 7. The 17 hits the wall in 1 or 2. He blew a left, blew a left rear. So, makes you wonder if there's some things the way the car was set up, caused some camber issues maybe. Ryan goes out 9th in Group A, and initially it ends up being P2. So, but there's still like 9 or 10 more guys to go. So it's going to kind of like get knocked down the board a little bit here, and he ends up 8th overall in the group. Now, I've been trying to keep track of this a little bit too because they're slow. No, they're 0.099 away from the 5th spot. So less than a tenth of a second. Once again, that is tight over a mile and a half. You could say it over, that's not much over a half mile, or something, but over a mile and a half, that's really tight. And that is just a little slip here or a slip there, or not hitting the corner correctly and coming out of it correctly. So is it the car? Is it the driver? Who knows? You watch it and you try to, see or hear what you can. But it's really not that far off of being in the top 10. So Group A, the 45, the 20, the 34, the 1, and the 24. Group B, the Fast 5 are the 19, the 48, the 54, the 5, and the 9 going for the pole. So the 54 gets the pole. And we keep track of the 45 because the 45 has been penalized before they even get to practice. So they had to run qualifying because they have to scuff up a set of tires. They're going to go to the rear no matter what. So as they're qualifying and they make the top 10, I think, well, they're probably not even going to run a lap now because why put another lap on those tires? You'll have those scuffs if you need them. But they do try a second attempt in the top 10 to go for the pole. But 8th is the great news because the way these things work is inside lane, outside lane. So once he goes to the rear of the field, everybody in his lane moves up a spot. Well, Ryan is in Group A, and Group A is the outside lane. So we know that come Sunday, first thing, Tyler goes to the rear. And then what you also realize is that the 5 car is in that same lane too. And if he doesn't make the start of the race, his car has to go to the rear for the driver change. And this actually all comes to fruition on Sunday. As we get to Sunday, we get the stage.
The Tyler thing, the Reddick thing was like they'd gone through pre-race inspection or just their first inspection of the weekend. And then they were found to have done something with the underwing or something. They modified something back there. And then they made them go back and basically car chief was out. I'm going to assume they may or may not be looking at fines. Maybe the pass-through penalty and the ejection was enough, but yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, like when you mentioned the fact about the lines moving up, that was one thing I noted listening to the radio on Sunday was when he tells them to move up the 2 spots, that they're kind of happy on the radio. They're like, oh, cool. Yeah.
He says nice. When Tim tells him. We got stages of 100, 200, 300, 400, 12 sets of tires, fuel run of 63 to 68. They're never going to get to that. It's all in tires here. To the rear of the 54, the 17, and the 5. Let's see here. Pit stall 39. I'm sorry. The 22 went to the rear too. Pit stall 39 behind the 66 car in front of the 43. The Ryan's row, does end up moving up 2. Tim informs him that he's gaining 2 rows as they're doing pace laps. They're going to go to the outside. You're going to move up 2. And like I said, Ryan goes, nice, and Tim says 10-4 on nice, the 54 starts the race in the low lane. And that found this, they watched the Xfinity race on Saturday and they said that on the all driver broadcast that a lot of these restarts, the guys were taking the lower lane. The lower lane was the better for the restart. But
Which he had the bull for the Saturday race too.
Yeah. So kind of surprises me that they do that, though. I would always think that the higher lane, because you're going to be up in that higher lane, but early on in these runs, they actually try to hook the bottom until they run out of tire. By lap 2, Ryan's up, is in the 14th. So, even though he moved up 2 rows, he loses a spot or 2 on the restart here. And the 4 passes him, or I'm sorry, lap 3, he passes the 4. And then the next lap, the 4 passes him back. So lap 5, though, he passes the 8 car up to 13th. At lap 6, we pass the 8 passes back. So it's a pretty good battle here early on with a couple guys. Ryan says he's too tight right off the start here. At lap 19, he passes the 4, gets up to 13. Lap 24 passes the 8, gets up to 12. Always fine with Ryan running these. The longer the run goes, the better he is at saving his stuff and running consistent lap times, and he'll get to these guys, But he tells them he's about 2 numbers tight. At lap 25, he's 2 to 3 tenths faster than the next 5 in front of him. So it's just a matter of tracking him down. Jonathan says we're coming to lap 30 here, about 10 to 15 away from pitting. Ryan says we can't afford to lose rear grip, but the front isn't turning. At lap 40, we're pitting here, and it's a 9.410 stop. Lap 46, the cycle continues. Back on the lead lap up to 13th. At lap 48, we passed the 44 who hasn't pitted yet, up to 11th. At lap 52, the cycle completes. Ryan is up to 8th. So they were 12th entering that cycle, and then all the way up to 8th at the end of that cycle. So it was a great pit cycle, the stop, the lap times, everything else. Lap 60, Tim tells me he did a pretty good lap there. It was the same as the leader, was 54. At lap 73 here, the 24 takes the lead. At lap 80, he's running, lap times are about the same as the next 7 cars in front of him, so not really kind of gaining on anybody. At lap 87, we get a caution for the 66 here. And Ryan says it fired off good, and then it does nothing. And, Jonathan says, the short run, we're going to free you up because they're going to come in. They know they're just basically going to pit twice. They're going to pit for this short run and then, have a pit at the break. 4 tires here and 9.84. Ryan says I'll get placed better in the box next time. So I guess it kind of, when he pulled in, didn't pull in exactly right, made the guys kind of move a little more than they wanted to, but they were in 8th and out 8th. They didn't lose any spots on this. The 54 is the leader here, taking the bottom. Ryan takes the bottom here. The restart at lap 93 sorts out to about 9th here. At lap 95, he passes the 9 and gets to 8th. At lap 96, passes the 4 car, gets to 7th. The 24 ends up winning the stage, and Ryan finishes 7th. So it gets some stage points right off the bat in the first stage, and seems like we're moving forward. It seems like everything is like we'll hear in the post-race interview. We wanted to really see what the adjustments are going to be like once the sun went down.
Yeah, we saw this type of race a lot last year, where they weren't necessarily qualifying up front, but they would just kind of methodically qualify top 15 or so, just kind of move through the field and then hang around in the top 5.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan says we're probably black here, between black and orange, but probably black. Ryan says 10-4 here. They do pit for 4 tires. It's a 9.377. Some took 2 or 3 cars stayed out. We got the 54 and the 1 staying out. The 10 and the 11 actually stayed out. So this is like a mixed bag here for this restart for stage 2 here. In front of Ryan, the 34 and the 22 took 2 tires. So Ryan is P12. So the pit stop, if the 4 cars hadn't stayed out and maybe they had pitted, probably would have been about a break even, but with those cars staying out and guys taking 2 tires and jumping up in front of them, Ryan, the leader takes the bottom 54, and Ryan takes the bottom also here. Restarting at lap 111, sorts out to 14, and I got the 6 got a bad start. Ryan was behind the 6 on this restart, and he got pinned behind him. And what's bad about this is that the 6 actually sorts out pretty good afterward. After 3 or 4 laps, he makes some moves, but Ryan got stuck. And when Ryan got stuck, other guys got by him. The 1 actually took the lead after this restart here, but lap 117, passing the 24 and the 34, get up to 10. Then at lap 119, 24 passes back, so back to 11th. But lap 120, passing back. They kind of go back and forth for a couple laps. The 19 passes at lap 123. We're back to 12th here. Lap 128, passing the 10. Get to 11th here, and the 20 leads. And at lap 137, they're kind of battling with the 17 here in 12th. And at lap 144, we're pitting. And once again, this is one of those deals where Skip Flores will probably talk about it. I mean, you have to. I would think you have to talk about it on Stacking Pennies. I can tell you what we saw through the front windshield, and Adam was there, and he can tell you what he saw in the pit stop itself. But first thing I saw through the front windshield was the right front tire getting away up pit road, up the next pit box actually, and as they drop the jack on that right hand side to come around to the left, Flores tracks it down. He gets it back. Now, as he tosses it toward the wall or whatever, and they go to catch it, as he's running back to the car, I see him jamming on his gun. Like there's a couple, like he's banging on it or trying to check something. So something, I don't know. So we're going to have to find out from Stacking Pennies for sure. But I have some sort of feeling something went wrong with that gun. So this stop ends up being like about a 14-second stop. During a green flag cycle, not ideal, but they pull off pit road, and as they're coming down the backstretch, basically Tim tells them we got to come back to pass through because of the uncontrolled tire. As they go to do that, Ryan is hooking the bottom, and all of a sudden the car shoots right up the track and hits the wall. He gets it down off the wall and down pit road. And I don't think this caused a caution at that point. The only thing that actually ends up causing the caution is when they have to move the car on pit road to get a wrecker for it because they can't get it to turn. So somehow he got it off the wall, got it down pit road to their pit box. And they start jamming on it on the right front, and they can't get it out of there. You said you saw the wheel come out, but then not the carcass.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, did they blow the tire and then something got in there? The way they hit the wall, I have a feeling the way they hit the wall, they knocked the arms off and hit, and kind of bent something, and that was part of the problem. But like I said, once again, we really won't know until we hear like Stacking Pennies or something like that.
Yeah, I can basically tell you from my perspective, we saw the front tire get away on the pit stop. So it's like immediately, and they've had a little bit of leeway with uncontrolled tires on green flag stops when there's not like impeding another box, like as far as like a car being pitted. So I wasn't sure, but I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be a penalty. So you already knew from there's going to be an issue. But then, he comes back around the track, and I actually didn't see him hit the wall because of the way our seats were angled, but I saw him go up the track, and then he comes back down across in front of us, and the wheel is just sideways. And I was like, well, that's even worse at this point. I was like, well, hopefully, I mean, I wasn't even thinking like toe link or suspension. I thought maybe just it was a loose wheel. And then they get him onto the big screen at Charlotte, and they're zooming in on them trying to work on the car. And like I said, they get the actual like the wheel out, but the tire carcass is still stuck up in there. And then, like you said, jamming on it, trying to fix it. And then they all kind of just back away at one point, and you could tell Jordan and some of the other folks down there kind of, I don't want to say distraught, but they kind of looked defeated a little bit because they had a fast car, and I can't even say we don't know the total facts yet, so I don't even want to say mistake or Skip's talked on the show before in issues the team has had in the past, and I want to say pretty far past at this point, where they've had some fluke instances or incidents and things. So Ryan, in his post-race interview on TV and on PRN on the radio, said, I think I may have blown a tire and went into the wall. So, which it surprised me because everybody else, all the chatter around us was all like they left the wheel loose. So, like I said, like you said, Stacking Pennies with our front tire changer Ryan Flores is a good podcast listen, and you're going to probably want to look for that because he goes into detail most of the time describing these things. And since this was such a big incident, I can't see him not talking about it. So.
Yeah, I mean he's pretty honest about what happened. He owns anything like that that does happen. So, I understand there's a lot of frustration in the immediate always, too, because it's just expectations are always set so high, and we know this is a championship team now, not just a team that can win every week, but now we know it's a team that can win a championship, and these are the same guys who did that last year. So when something like this goes awry, it does kind of like get to you a little bit, and I'm sure, like you said, there are people who get frustrated and so forth, but we got luckily we have another week to rebound and try to do it again, and these guys will definitely try to figure out what it was, what they did, what they didn't do, and try to keep it from happening again. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, worth noting just quickly, especially in comparison to the past and what we've had, is that for a good chunk of the season, this pit crew led the entire series and 4 tire pit stop average. Most recently, they were in second. They've had a really strong year. This is the first kind of real incident that's occurred. So I'm sure they'll use whatever happened as a learning experience and they'll move on. Unfortunately, and I don't know how much more we talk about the race. I mean, it didn't really get too much further after that. I mean, the stage ends.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any notes on that kind of thing, but yeah, weather. I'm already checking my apps and stuff at this point because pretty much everybody knows weather is coming and it's on the way. It's just about when, and we're already making our plans for how we're going to bail out of the stands and head back to the hotel. Yeah. And luckily, we planned that all well because it did get really scary out there for a brief period of time. So.
That caused things to stop. It wasn't rain per se; it was a lightning bolt. Larson had just made it to the track, so it was roughly around 9:30, and at that point, thought this should be good. He's going to jump in the car, and mind you, he has to jump in and go to the rear. If it happens during the red flag, he has to jump in and go to the rear. But they're thinking that car was so fast, and he was going to have a stage and a half to do things because they were midway in through the third stage by this point. That he was probably going to get his chance to work his way up there, and if cautions fell just right, he might get one of those things where he move up 5 spots, get a caution, move up another 4 or 5 spots, get a caution, get himself up there. And if the car was that good, who knows? What the night could have been for him, and NASCAR, I'm definitely sure wanted to see what that would be like. The fact that they didn't get that chance to do that was probably, they were working toward it for a little while. That was the part that was probably most disappointing, is they made an attempt for a little while.
Yeah.
But then you hear that the humidity was the reason why they couldn't get the track dried, and I thought, yeah, well, it's nighttime. There's no sun. There probably was no wind after that storm moved through, so it just didn't do anything to help. And
yeah, they could have gotten it dry. It just, the race wasn't going to start until probably 1:30 in the morning, and then wouldn't be over till after 3, and then people wouldn't be out of there till after 4, and it's so you mentioned Larson's car being fast, and just shout out to Justin Allgaier, who prior to this had never been in an X-Gen car in competition. Now, I understand he's driven like the Wheel Force car for Chevrolet at some places, some tests, but he jumps into that car. He does go like barely a lap down at the beginning, but you can kind of tell he gets his lap back, gets it back under him, and the guy finishes 13th.
He raced to get his lap back.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Not just like lucky dog or, some sort of strategy play. They raced past the leader at one point. And yeah, he did a fabulous job. And I thought it was going to be there's some talk about if they would have continued and got things done and Larson would have won the race, that actually technically the guy who starts in the car gets credit. So It's very possible, could have been very possible that Larson could have won the race, put the car in victory lane, and then Allgaier would have been the one celebrating the win. It would have been to his credit. That would have been even crazier ending to the evening. But Christopher Bell does get the win, and it's not really a bad win. Rain shortened is always the thing that you hear about, being like, oh, well, it was rain shortened. But the truth is he drove his way up there, and he had a car, from what I saw during the evening, he had a car that definitely could have been a winning car. So, kudos to them for figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm definitely usually on the side of a win is a win. But it's just does seem like this race is like the one especially if you had it 1-1 before. Like if you're Brad Keselowski and he went out and won this shortened, oh, that's fine. He won one, 2020 or whatever. That's okay. But it's like of all the races to win rain shortened, you don't want it to be the longest race of the year to where, Bell wins the Coca-Cola. What did I say? It was like 373 or something like that, and not the Coca-Cola 600. So, but again, much like when Bubba won Talladega, everybody was racing to the rain at that point. Bell and Keselowski did before the last restart. I didn't get to actually see the last restart because we were walking out at that point. But Keselowski had tracked Bell down. They were racing pretty hard. So it's like everybody knew where they were racing for, essentially. So, yeah. Kudos to Bell, second win of the year, solidly into the playoffs, and most likely is going to be a contender again when it comes down to that at the end of the year. We do have to talk about Ryan. Last 4 races have not been spectacular. Couple of last place, near last place finish in this race. 2 DNFs in that stretch. He has tumbled out of the top 10 in the point standings, which is unfortunate. The surprising thing, though, a couple of things have helped us. The other guys around him have had trouble as well. Larson completely missing this race as the leader also really helps because he gets 0 points on the day. So Ryan, while he falls into the 12th position in the overall standings of the Cup Series, he's just 116 points out of the lead. Last week, when he was still in the top 10, he was 100 points out of the lead. So he just loses 16 points at this point. Really, I don't know that they are in contention for the regular season championship with the amount of races that are left. It's all about getting a win at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, you don't want to be one of those guys who just gets to the cut line and gets inside the cut line and gets in that way. Because that those during the playoffs, each round you reset and you get a couple. If you have a win, you've got 5 bonus points when you reset. And unless you're in that top 5 or 6 at the end of the regular season, you don't get any extra bonus points there either. So, yeah, getting a win or 2 wins between now and the end of the regular season is definitely what we want to see here. Get some momentum going. Just like last year at this point. Win the 600, and you've gotten that momentum. So we've got a couple weeks here to get this done. Was it 8 or 10 more races here to get it done? So let's just concentrate on next week and do what we can with next week. So the funny part is that they've been getting better as far as like qualifying a little bit, but then the race itself, each week that these things have happened, they've been a top 5 car at all these different types of tracks. So, you get it to be a top 5 car, and then you're just a step away from being a winning car. And, we just need to continue racing and get to the end of a race so we can see what we can do.
And there are Fords that are showing some speed. Unfortunately, though, this 600 race again was just what we've seen all year out of Team Penske. Ryan's the one that's running up front, and the 22 and the 2 are 15th and beyond. So the RFK cars have figured it out. Front row cars are kind of like Penske, like here and there they've been okay. The ones that's really surprising are like the Rick Ware car, the 51 that's running 10 spots ahead of where it normally would. So it's like they've figured out they're on the RFK campus, so it's like they've given them a little bit of a nibble of what they've found. But the Keselowski bunch has definitely figured it out, and we saw the same thing last year. Buescher goes out and wins 3 races in the summer. Brad was basically in contention almost every single race that Buescher won. But then Penske eventually figured it out by the end of the year, and Ryan goes on this, momentous swing through the playoffs and picks up a couple more wins on his way to the championship. So I mentioned this in the Discord where, a lot of people vent in there, and it just was echoed 2022 again to me where, we didn't win a points race and people were frustrated and we're hearing about, oh, Ryan needs to go here and let's do this and let's fire this person. And I'm like, 2022, they didn't win a points race all year. And he was just a couple positions at Martinsville out of making the championship 4. So nothing phases me at this point.
Yeah. Question for you and everybody listening. Who has won the last 2 Cup championships? What team, organization?
Oddly enough, that would be Team Penske.
Penske, two different drivers too, not just one guy dominating.
Yep.
No, two different guys, so that's a whole two different teams of guys that figured out how to do it. So, you know, would you want that every year? Definitely. But do you know any organization that's done that lately? There's only one other one that can do that kind of thing, and that's Hendrick. So for the Ford guys, I mean, just keep doing what they're doing. They're going to keep working at it, and I guarantee you, by the time the playoffs roll around, the top Ford guy will be Ryan, and he'll do his thing.
So Team Penske and Team 12 are probably some teams that you can rely on down the stretch. A team that you cannot rely on down the stretch is my fantasy team. So let's go and do our fantasy recap for the week. That was in the Coca-Cola 600. We had that week off during the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro where there was no fantasy. So we jumped back into it again this week. I very admittedly did not really put too much thought into this. I just kind of looked at qualifying and thought of some historic stuff, and despite all that, I didn't have Ryan anywhere in my. I'm still trying to save him, I guess, which was weird. You think I would have started him at some point in this race, but I didn't. And hey, that works out, unfortunately. So my starters: Ty Gibbs, who was on the pole, got me 40 points. Bubba Wallace got me 39 points. Kyle Busch got me 22. Chase Elliott got me 34, and the winner Christopher Bell got me 57. So pretty decent starting lineup. I left Martin Truex Jr. in the garage. I had zero chance of updating my fantasy because I was in like right at pit entry in the grandstand, which was still part of what I would consider kind of the main grandstand, and Wi-Fi and cell service was non-existent. Cell service beyond a text message. I could get text to you pretty clearly, but social media, fantasy app, none of that was working unless I went under the grandstand. So I'll say it again, Marcus Smith, you keep saying fan first Wi-Fi is amazing, and I disagree. So I couldn't mess with my garage at all. So I lost a few points on leaving Truex in the garage.
I was going to say, I noticed the difference about the tracks more and more now, and that's one of the differences. Is that the two main ownership groups? I mean, there's one or two independents out there still, but the two main ownership groups, NASCAR is doing a way better job, and not just the Wi-Fi, but the handling of parking, because you got to pay at certain places, you don't have to pay at others, and that's just things like that too. So yeah, they're lacking, and it's there's other things that were happening at the track this weekend. That ownership group's got to get their act together, because they're hurting the sport in the long run. I saw nothing but bad things about the internet and some things like that. So they got to figure that out.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's weird to get in the discussion in the middle of fantasy, but I will say at NASCAR tracks, as far as the facilities go and like the Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff, the infrastructure, I will say, above and beyond better than SMI. SMI tracks, like the show, the entertainment, like that kind of stuff, above and beyond a lot of the NASCAR tracks outside of, I would say, like Daytona. So, but I'm at Charlotte, and it's great track and stuff, but like stuff feels a little bit outdated there, and a little bit, could use a little bit more upkeep. But that pre-race show, especially for Memorial Day, and the helicopters flying over the stands, and they're doing military demonstration, like that was insane. Entertainment they had out on the midway, and concerts. I mean, they had a legitimate Matchbox 20 concert, which a lot of other tracks still have a pre-race concert with somebody that maybe had one song or you've never heard of them. So I'll give it to Marcus Smith in that they do a great job with the show. But NASCAR tracks, as far as their infrastructure and facilities, I feel like they're a little bit better. One last thing on my fantasy stuff, my featured matchups, I had Byron over Allgaier. That was right. I had Stenhouse over Jimmy Johnson. I thought that was a funny matchup because it was basically like I picked Stenhouse and I was wrong. So good for Jimmy. Blaney over Bush, that was wrong. And I picked Logano over Reddick, and that was wrong. So I only got one of the four. So I ended up 35th overall this week, 202 points earned.
Yeah, I had the exact same on the matchups, by the way. So I had one right there, but I had Bell, Elliott, Byron, Wallace, and Truex. So the actual team itself was pretty solid points wise. Ryan, I had Ryan, and I just made sure he was in the garage before the end of stage 2 there. So, yeah, I had the first, second, sixth, and eighth and 11th best guys. I mean, so for team wise, if I could have picked up one or two other, of the matchups, I'd have moved right up there because I think I ended up 20th overall.
Yeah, 20th overall and 11 points out of the top 10 essentially. So
yeah,
it's pretty tight.
Mhm.
So the top 10 actually starts with a 4-way tie for 8th, with Blaniacal, Alyssa C, the Dalai Lama 4, and Blaney 10 with 235 points earned at the Coca-Cola 600. 7th is Supermod 236. 5th, we have a tie with Moose Hunter 1960 and Goes Larson at 238. 4th is Zero Schlitz Given 243. 3rd is Frank Fan 12 244. 2nd is Fike 21 245. And leading the way this week with the win at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coca-Cola 600, the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League, is Christian Dana, 260 points earned. Let's take a look now at the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. My team right now, 27th position, still pretty good for me, 2,577 points. Mez 12 is in the 22nd position, 2,611 points. And now let's take a look at the top 10, starting in 10th with Charlie Abu, 2,676 points. And 9th is Blaney or Bust, 2,696. 8th is Factory of Santa 6, 2,712. 7th is Penske Fan 24, 2,719. 6th is Moose Hunter 1960, 2,720. 5th is Dr. Race Chaser, 2,743. 4th is Blaney 10, 2,761. In the 3rd position, Alyssa C, 2,768 points. 2nd is Frank Fan 12, 2,788. And pulling away slightly in the 1st position, Go Larson, 2,816 points. So that brings us to this weekend's race for the NASCAR Cup Series, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, NASCAR Truck Series. It's a split weekend. So here's your NASCAR and TV report for Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, just outside of St. Louis, and Portland International Raceway, where the NASCAR Xfinity Series is headed way far out into the Pacific Northwest. Shout out to Nicole, right?
NASCAR Siberia.
Yep. So Nicole is going to be enjoying that race, I'm sure, with the Xfinity Series this weekend. Hopefully the weather holds out for them. So Saturday, June 1st, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying at Worldwide Technology Raceway. You can watch that on FS1. 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Toyota 200 at Gateway on Fox. So that's on the main network. The Truck Series race 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you have the NASCAR Xfinity Series Pacific Automation 147 or Pacific Automation 147 at Portland International Raceway on FS1. So practice at 10 a.m. on FS1. The truck race is on Fox at 1:30, and then 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the Xfinity Series on the road course at Portland International on FS1. Then Sunday, June 2nd, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the NASCAR Cup Series Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway on FS1. The Cup Series has been at Gateway only twice the last 2 years, 2022, 2023. It has been a great track for Ryan Blaney. 2022 started 5th, finished 4th. 2023 started 2nd, finished 6th. Also led 83 laps in the race last year. So average start 3.5, average finish of 5th. So we don't have that much historical stats to go on, but the stats that we do have are pretty impressive. And with the way, so this is like a mile and a third track or something, a little over a mile. The speed that they had at North Wilkesboro, the speed that they've had at shorter tracks recently, speed that they've had at a place like Phoenix. I feel like Gateway might be another strong track for Team Penske this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit flatter. The turns are a little flatter. So it doesn't really, it's not like high banked or anything like that. So they seem to get the car to turn pretty good in that situation. And both ends are a little different too. So it's a little bit like Darlington in that way too, where both ends are a little bit different turn too. So you got to set up for one better than the other and so forth. But just have a solid weekend here. Let's trying to win is the goal every week, but just have a solid weekend, everywhere, all the way around, because the worst part about the last couple of weeks has been, it's not been one thing. It's been different things, and different people affecting things. And, when you've got other drivers affecting your race and so forth, that's not the way you want to race. So hopefully nobody else affects the race and we let the driver do his thing.
Now, you mentioned Darlington. If you were to look at this track from above, it would look like a mini Darlington, but you're right. It's flat. It's a lot flatter, though. So fantasy speaking, I think the Penske guys, we're going to want to watch practice and qualifying, but just based on how they ran last year, look at the Penske guys. Ryan might be somebody, at least one in your garage with the success that he's had there so far. But let's take a look. The winner in this race last year was Kyle Busch. So the top 10 was Busch, Hamlin, Logano, Larson, Truex, Blaney, Suarez, Byron, McDowell, and Kevin Harvick. So I wouldn't actually be shocked, fantasy wise. Michael McDowell might be somebody worth playing. They've been doing pretty well at tracks like this year. So anybody else stand out to you, or are you really going to be waiting to see what they can lay down in practice?
The 2311 guys have been showing up really well, no matter what type of track they've been at. So I look for Tyler and Bubba and see what they can do. It's kind of funny because you threw all those names out there, and one of them is Harvick, and he's not racing this year, and he's done so. And that group as a whole has been so hit and miss. But Keselowski, on the other hand, in the last couple of weeks has been right up in there, won a race, and this past week finished second, and he was running right up in the top 5. So that's a guy, him and Buscher. Buscher doesn't wreck a car and have to start in the back. Who knows what his day would have been like. So those are the kind of guys I'm looking for this weekend. Come out of the blue a little bit.
I'd definitely be looking at Kyle Busch. So again, he won this race last year. He finished second in the inaugural race there in 2022. Team Penske, talk about them being strong. All 3 Team Penske cars have finished in the top 15 in both races, including Austin Cindric, and Logano won the first race in 2022. So any of the Penske cars, Kyle Busch is due for something to go right for him, I guess, somewhere along the way. And maybe this is a place where he bounces back. Whether he does, it doesn't really matter to me, but fantasy-wise, it might be worth a look. So if you want to tune in again this weekend for the Cup Series, specifically 10 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, practice and qualifying on FS1, and then Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series. Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway on FS1. So, Steve, I think that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the Team Blaney podcast. I want to thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. We'd also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Medicine Hat. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.